With Love, Meghan failed to crack the top 10 this time around. The Rotten Tomatoes score is even lower than it was the first time. And as ever, not only isn't selling out, but no one's talking about it. The sales are not increasing, the viewership isn't increasing, everything is decreasing. And in business, you need growth. That's almost always the goal. And Meghan has accomplished the opposite. And this time, the important question is, who can she blame? She blamed people over archetypes. She blamed COVID for things. Who can she blame for this failure this time around? Remember how much control she had over the show as the producer and what the amount of control she had over the products with As Ever. She's even told us this herself countless times. Even in breathy fake screams, she has described just how much she has had her hands in As Ever and how much she's involved and how much she works so hard. The failures of As Ever and With Love, Meghan then, factually, would fall on her shoulders. She's been given the control that she thought she required, and she didn't achieve the results that she clearly thought she would. Meghan, of course, is never to blame, on the record at least. When things went south with Prince Harry's family, and as a working royal, Meghan said it was because they didn't do what she wanted, or they wouldn't let her do what she wanted, or because they didn't help her. It was their fault. It wasn't her rude behaviors or manipulations or lack of effort. She blamed Megxit on the press. Backlash for the Oprah interview was due to the media. Archetypes and the Spotify deal fell apart not because of Meghan's lack of talent or work ethic, no, but because they didn't properly set her up. They didn't guide her. They didn't support her. The Bench was only published because several friends insisted she do so. American Riviera Orchard Montecito had to be abandoned, not because it was a terrible name for a business, but because it would have limited Meghan to sell products only from the area. As Ever was the fault of many friends texting her on the same day just how much the jam made them happy. So naturally, she had to turn it into a business. There was no other choice. It's not the Meg who wanted to do it, no. She doesn't want to be blamed for her horrible ideas. And With Love, Meghan was someone at Netflix screaming at her, "There's a show here in this jam, loose spread." Each time Meghan abandons something, or starts something, or ruins something, it's someone else's fault. But I struggle to see how she is going to be able to blame anyone but herself for the With Love, Meghan nonsense, it failing, and As Ever sliding downwards now, because she hoarded so much control over it. And she also publicized just how much control she's had. Objectively, it's been a disappointing, even pitiful few weeks for the Meg, after hyping herself excessively, going on 2 podcasts, a Time 100 interview, 2 print and 1 video interviews, proclaiming her new identity of CEO boss mom. Things have fallen apart. Most of us saw through it at the time and had presentiments about how the Meg's projects, even before her ominous 2025 was scribbled on the wintry beach. Nevertheless, she tried to persuade everyone to believe this new identity, Meg's 20th rebrand in recent years, and the rug has been pulled out right from under her 2 big shoes. Despite her flinging out businessy words like SKUs and tranches to really try to sell the image, it hasn't worked. Because the proof is in the pudding. Her Netflix deal has been aggressively downgraded. Her part 2, marketed as season 2 for With Love, Meghan, didn't make the top 10 and was reviewed worse than the first part, even just by virtue of everyone being sick of it, and her As Ever products aren't moving. It couldn't have gone worse. And this is the opposite of what we would expect to see in both of these endeavors. In a business, like with As Ever, but also with shows like With Love, Meghan. Generally speaking, you're looking for growth. Growth of audience and growth of sales. Meg's endeavors have not had any growth this year. Not really. Let's start with the show. Season 1 was a disaster in terms of reviews, but it did achieve an initial spike in views. We know that this was due to a very large number of critics, reviewers, content creators, and journalists watching the show in order to make their reviews. But of course, there were a lot of people who gave the show a chance as well, for whatever reason. I think amongst people who don't particularly like Meghan or don't agree with her actions, we're still capable of giving the show a chance, an opportunity to prove that there is something that she can do and do well or right, or maybe a curiosity of if Meghan is in her element, can she be likable? I know I wondered this and part of me was hoping this could be a positive and something that was, done right so that it's not always criticizing. But she didn't. The way I thought of it before seeing the show and the trailer and whatnot this year was because Meghan so often looks awkward and uncomfortable and makes a lot of social faux pas, she looks nervous almost all the time, insecure. She looks insecure. That's the word I'm looking for. She comes across so incredibly insecure that I thought, maybe even though she was an actor, that's a very controlled environment and you have a director giving you instructions. And your biggest task in a show like Meghan's was memorizing the lines and doing what you're told. So there was part of me that thought, even from the start, that Meghan just is very socially awkward, very unaware, and has a hard time in these dynamics, like with the royal family and meet and greets and, interactions with people. She has a hard time coming across in a way that doesn't look awkward for whatever reason. There can be a lot of non-problematic reasons why somebody comes across super awkward and insecure. And they're not all nefarious or bad or by choice or weird, there's a lot of normal, understandable reasons that don't change the way people view you of why maybe you might come across a little bit awkward sometimes. There's some really fabulous awkward people out there. So I thought perhaps maybe this was just a really rough time for Meghan. Part of me wondered, could it be that she's just that insecure and awkward and unaware that it's impossible to succeed in the settings of royal duties and engagements and in public facing things, and within the space of a show like with Love Meghan where it's a more controlled environment and she's supposedly in her element, maybe she will blossom or thrive or really come through and it'll be like, wow, oh, okay, she can do this, or there is something more here, or whatever. I thought maybe we've just never seen Meghan in her element. Maybe she's just so socially awkward that even though we associate a lot of her behaviors with narcissism, it could just be overwhelming insecurity and unawareness. Maybe viewing Meghan in her comfort zone, allegedly with her alleged friends, cooking her supposed love language, that you would expect to see the closest thing to a relaxed and comfortable version of Meghan as possible. Less overthinking, less acting, less insecurity. But no, it wasn't that way at all. Not even a little bit. She came across contrived as ever, corny, and also incredibly boring. And also rigid, persnickety in a negative way. She didn't connect with the audience. She barely connected with her guests, and she didn't come across genuine or authentic or organic. Nay, she came across as controlling, restrictive, prickly, and pretentious. And so even though people gave it a chance, and some people, including myself, went into With Love Meghan with an open mind, she failed to reach potential there. She failed to maximize on the opportunity's potential. And so for Netflix, from a business perspective, they already had all the footage for part 2 and a holiday special film, so why not use it and try to get some of their investment back? Even though viewership fell off the edge of a cliff shortly after season 1 premiered, they didn't have much to lose. Their reputation is already tarnished. Their lack of confidence in part 2 was obvious, though. There was very little promotion involved, and although they put statements out that were supportive, they were unwilling to put any money into advertising the second batch of episodes. If you've missed my recaps on the episodes so far, I will link them for you up at the top of the page. There's a playlist with everything related to the With Love Meghan and As Ever stuff. You can find the episode-by-episode reviews there that even include some clips, so you can see for yourself the awkwardness play out. You don't have to take my word for it. And just as many of us predicted, season 2 or part 2 underperformed. It didn't hit the top 10 and was estimated to have only gotten a maximum of about 2 million views, while part 1 achieved more than twice that. While we don't have hard numbers or rankings just yet, one source at Forbes said it would have been at least 500,000 less views than season 1. But if you look at what did make it into the top 10 on Netflix for that week, we have, she was up against Wednesday season 2. That would have been right there, seal the deal that they're not going to get good views. Maybe Netflix did that on purpose as a way out. Like, look how poorly season 2 performed. We can't justify a season 3. But they put it up against some tough competition comparatively. But way down here, if you look, ranked at number 9, The Great British Baking Show, Collection 13, got 1.9 million views. Ranked at number 10 was Miss Rachel Season 2. I don't know what that is. Views not listed. So it's definitely less than 1.9 million. Probably pretty significantly less than 1.9 million, which means With Love Meghan would have had to have been less than 1.8 million at most. So the ceiling for how the maximum amount of views that With Love Meghan Season 2 could have gotten would be 1.8. According to the data that we have right now. So we can infer that With Love Meghan Season 2, or Part 2, achieved about half of what Part 1 did. That's not good. For a show, that is devastating data. A viewership loss of 50% indicates that there was not enough return viewers to support even matching the first season. Zero growth, huge loss. As for her business, the As Ever Goods, she and Netflix have made a grave error. Premature scaling. Much like the show, the products also had a high percentage of reviewers purchasing the products, people who acquired the products exclusively for their jobs, to make reviews. While it is important for consumer goods lines to constantly not sell out, it's also important to be cautious of false precedents and skewed metrics early on. You don't want to scale on sales that were propped up by one-off reviews and critics. But that's exactly what they've done here. A business should have a product market fit before it even begins to think about scaling. The excitement of early success can cause companies to rush into aggressive expansion without first building a solid foundation of repeatable processes, sustainable financials, and a strong company culture. Ignoring these signals and scaling too fast is one of the leading causes of startup failure. And it's fairly obvious that the Meg has not given ample time for demand to level to a consistent and predictable metric. While growth is important, allowing a plateau that shows a degree of consistency amongst her sales would have been wise before scaling, due to the fact that she does drive critics. And people wanted to make a news story or a YouTube video or something like that reviewing the actual products. So people bought them for their jobs, for their work. That made up a large percentage of those initial sales. Of course, there were people who were giving it a chance or morbidly curious or just are actually fans of Meghan. But until you see the sales plateau and balance over like a full year, it would be unwise to make huge leaps in scaling because of that reason, in Meghan's case specifically. Achieving a product market fit is crucial for a business's success and sustainability, particularly for startups like Meghan's. It indicates that the product has a viable business model and creates a solid foundation for growth and profitability and retains some amount of their customers. Without a PMF, companies may struggle with customer acquisition, retention, and scaling, and risk failure. Because Meghan's initial sales were made up in part by reviewers who will not be repeat customers, they just won't, it's even more important that they waited for sales to stabilize before scaling. Meaning, it was a mistake to increase into the hundreds of thousands or even millions of units because the first few rounds of data are not accurate depictions of long-term customer acquisition or retention. It's just impossible to have that in Meghan's case. And it's not really surprising. I mean, this is part of the problem with Meghan's choice of endeavor here. Lots of people have great potential, fabulous ideas, and try to make a name for themselves within this space or genre of lifestyle content or cooking content or consumable products or homey sorts of products or even boutique food goods. Like, this is not a new market. This is a very common market for people to try their hand in. There's a lot of in and out. There's a high turnover of businesses and new companies and whatnot. And even people trying lifestyle content. It's this type of a brand and this type of a genre is a popular one. So the question becomes, what does Meghan have that can give her brand an edge over the others? She has a lot of competition in this space, both in the content and in the products. And what will make a business succeed versus not comes down to better ideas, better quality, more innovation or creativity, more personality or charisma, something unique to establish a brand that will stimulate growth on its own. She claimed to know her audience. A clapback to all of us wondering who the heck this show and these products are actually for. Ultimately, the products are nothing special though. It's equivalent to a collaboration. The only reason to buy Meghan's versus those in the store is for name value. Her name carries little to no value in the real world, but she is banking on it. We are talking about one of the most unpopular, famous people of modern times. High disapproval ratings consistently year after year. The math doesn't work here. Her tiny number of fans simply are not enough to establish growth for a business. And she doesn't have better ideas than her competitors. She also hasn't achieved higher quality, certainly not innovation or creativity. Obviously, we know the suppliers. There's no innovation, no increase in quality, no creativity, given that these are white label products. So what would inspire a consumer to choose her brand over another, or just buying that same product with a different label on it? She is banking on her association alone to carry this brand. So circling back to the big question, who is her target audience for this show, for the products? It's clear that she didn't build either of these things with the answer to that question in mind. She did not clearly define who her audience was before she began this nonsense. She did not think from the perspective of who is my audience, what can I deliver them that is valuable, quality, and likable that will inspire them to not only come back for more, but to share it and expand the audience for me. Grassroots. Connecting to the audience, in theory, is one of the most important steps because it can be the difference between building momentum and losing everything due to a lack of growth. So what does this mean for the future of With Love Meghan and the As Ever brand? I personally don't predict a season 3 happening, quite honestly, because the viewership is so low for 2. Even if it had broke even with the first season or shown any degree of growth or even just barely squeaked by, got close to season 1, kind of matched the viewership, we may have had to endure a part 3 because Netflix would be like, well, we can count on this getting about 5 million views. We can make a little bit of change off of that and maybe it'll grow eventually. But it bombed. Part 2 really nosedived. So I don't foresee them going in for more. I think Meghan will try to spin this as she's going to focus on As Ever and doesn't have time for With Love Meghan anymore, even though that too looks to be limited in its trajectory. Worse, she could even try to claim a pivot to makeup or fashion, God forbid, because she seems really fixated on this lately. She keeps sprinkling comments about how she believes people associate her with makeup and beauty products and fashion, and she thinks it would have been obvious for her, or people expected her to go into fashion. Setting the absurdity of that aside, no, Meg, for the record, no one thinks you should get into fashion. Everyone thinks that you should learn about fashion a little bit, learn to dress better, perhaps less wrinkly to start. Realistically, though, it would be extraordinarily challenging for Meghan going forward to find partners to fund a fashion or a beauty endeavor after all these failures, to move into a different space and be like, no, you know what I want to do next is this instead, and have an entirely new venture is going to be even more challenging now, if not impossible, after what we have witnessed with As Ever and With Love Meghan. That is a big red flag in the business world. Even though in content and businesses, there is always a lot of flops and just a handful of hits. Not everything works. The best investors and entrepreneurs have endured countless rounds of failing in order to achieve the great successes that they have. But Meghan doesn't view things that way, and her disassociation from this and her unwillingness to speak about it in these realistic terms, the way business people tend to, would also be a red flag. Meghan demands everything be viewed in a delusional vacuum of ego that proclaims everything a success regardless of performance, facts, or reality. This will inevitably inhibit her ability to progress within business spaces because she's unwilling to join us in the real world, and so future opportunities will be negatively impacted by this recent decline in her projects. Her performance has shown once again that she cannot succeed. Nothing grows, especially when she's in control of it. Just like somebody who sucks at keeping their houseplants alive, you can give them the easiest, most simple plant with the best, most simplest care instructions, very, very hardy plant, and it will still perish under their supervision. If you liked today's video, please do consider clicking the subscribe button and the like button, only if you would like to. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope you have a happy day ahead. Bye!